Hello, this is Dread, and in today's video topic, this is going to be the finished build showcase for the Electrify Smite Healing Hands Paladin. So we pushed all the way to like 670 corruption. After that, I was like, I feel like I pushed far enough. It's time to start the next build. So we're going to be talking about the build more in detail here. Now, if you haven't already, I would heavily suggest leaving a like on the video and subscribing to the channel, as that is the current best way of supporting me. And you can also check out the Twitch down below, because that's where I stream a bunch, and you can ask me questions about Last Epoch there. Now, let's get into the build, shall we? So, the whole idea of the build is built around one specific node, and that is the node inside Healing Hands that spreads Electrify up to 4 targets whenever you hit an enemy with it. This is very strong. This means that if you have two enemies and they're sitting next to each other, if you hit a Healing Hand on one, it will spread your Electrify stacks to the other, and then it will do that again and again and again, and essentially you'll kind of like bounce the stacks between each other of both the enemies and until they die. So for instance, the more enemies there are, the more Electrify stacks that are being spread around, and the more the merrier, right? And that has allowed this self-cast Smite Healing Hands build to actually push into endgame with pretty good efficiency so far, considering I am a life-based paladin that is pushing all the way up into this corruption without any low life, without any ward, without abusing the ward nodes inside Healing Hands. That means that this build is definitely a lot better than your average paladin build. And like I said, that is all due to the Electrify node. The Electrify node allows you to clean up packs very quickly that a normal self-cast Smite build would never be able to do, thanks to, of course, the new node. Overall, the build has been great because of this node. Now, the next thing that we do is, of course, we convert our Smite into Electrify utilizing Order of Lagan. This makes it so that all Ignite from everywhere is converted into Electrify. This means we can get Ignite chance on our gear, Ignite chance from our sigils, and stuff like that. All that combined leads to a lot of Electrify chance for our Smite, and then of course Smite does a lot of damage thanks to the Sacrifice node. Of course, it's like 250% more damage for everything that you're doing with your Smite. Then you grab all the nodes that give you extra bolts whenever you smite something, because all of this combined means that you smite a pack 2 to 3 times and they absolutely melt. Now, of course, in the footage that you're seeing, you're probably seeing that the build is taking a little bit of time to kill packs, and that is because of the modifiers. So with the new patch, corruption has been reworked where the average of difficulty has raised significantly, but you no longer have very spiky modifiers. But I have a monolith here that I'm looking at, like 701% more health and damage. That is like the equivalent of like 1,000 corruption or whatever it was like last patch. I can't remember. It was even more than that. But it has allowed me to push my difficulty high enough so that I can test builds properly. So back in the day, I normally wouldn't really push builds that far, mainly because I just didn't really feel like it, because the old corruption system was like eating nails for breakfast. But now, with the new corruption system, it's actually very entertaining to push, and we pushed this all the way to 700. Now, some of the items that I would suggest having for this build, the first thing, of course, being a Bleeding Heart. Bleeding Heart allows you to leech off of your Electrify stacks, meaning that on top of all of your healing means you can stay sustained in these high echoes. One of the bigger problems in general with a lot of builds is sustain. Being able to keep that high health pool full is very important. We're stacking a lot of life and we need to keep it full. So Bleeding Heart plus all the healing that we got from Healing Hands and of course Smite, all that combined means that of course we can keep our HP topped up so that we don't get one shot most of the time, right? Then of course another item that we want to be utilizing is the Electrify Sword, Aurelis. This gives us a very large amount of penetration with Electrify. This on top of the penetration inside the Smite tree gives us a lot of extra damage because penetration is really strong. Also, this is global Electrify penetration, meaning that it gives the Electrify stacks that we apply with Healing Hands penetration, which actually means that our clear ends up being significantly better because the Electrify in Smite isn't global, meaning that, of course, like our Healing Hands Electrifies normally wouldn't do that much damage, but thanks to the sword, that is no longer a problem, right? Of course, we can get a large amount of stats on this sword as it is low LP. I got a 2 LP one here with like damage over time and ignite chance, but eventually when the market opens up, you could probably get a 3 LP pretty easily. Another thing as well that we're utilizing is a 2 LP Blood of the Exile. The reason why we're utilizing this is because it has a lot of strength and a lot of, movement speed. That plus HP and movement speed on top of that means that we can zoom through monoliths very quickly. Once you get into these higher corruptions, one thing you start to realize is mobility is key. If you're not moving out of enemy attacks, you're probably dying. Unless if you have a very, very tanky build like a druid or something. That is because, there are certain, abilities in Last Epoch that aren't really meant to be tanked. Unless if, of course, you are breaking the rules, right? By doing something really stupid like the current Healing Hands tech, right? So, like, for instance, since I'm not sitting around with like 20k ward, it means I need to be very mobile. And thankfully, we have a lot of options to do that, and having a double movement speed pair of boots helps with that. This was supposed to be a slot for a 2 LP Atera's Blessing, but I sacrificed all 5 that were on the market for MG to the gods, and I did not get a single usable Atera's Path, meaning that, of course, I had to go elsewhere, and that's why we're utilizing Blood of the Exile. But I think the cheaper option in the future would be, of course, Atera's Path with 2LP, HP, and like movement speed or whatever. That would be the preferred option in this slot. And for the other slots, there's just a bunch of exalteds with decent amounts of elemental damage over time. And the last thing being the Usolini Sphere. You must be wondering, why do I have this? Well, thankfully, right now, as it currently stands, it is giving me well over like 400% increased damage on bosses. That's a lot of increased damage, and that helps a lot in single target situations. Right now, my Reign of Dragons kill is around 2 minutes, and my Orbis kill is also around 2 minutes. Sadly, due to the new way that corruption is done, it means that the base stats of enemies are going to be significantly higher because of that ginormous 701% more health and damage modifier, meaning that big fat HP pools that, like for instance, the Reign of Dragons boss, right? The Emperor of Corpses, he has a very large amount of HP, leading it to become just a long fight, even though I have like 600k ticks on the dummy. My T4 Drilla kill is actually a minute 10, which is above average for most builds. So that's actually kind of cool as well. So the build has damage. It's just the new corruption system makes it so you have to actually deal with HP on bosses. But that's just enough of me rambling. Let's go in game and talk about the build more in detail, shall we? You are in game with the character named God Hand. If you get it, you get it. And of course, this is where we're at right now. We're at 672 corruption. I have been pushing and pushing and pushing, and I also got to rank 9 in the Merchants Guild. I'm almost to 10, although 8 is the most important, right? I'm level 100 as well. This is way more than I normally play a build. Why is that? Well, now that 1.0 is released, I have a lot more drive to push builds to their absolute limit, mainly because before, like, the old corruption system was a lot worse, and now it's a lot better. So let's talk about the build some more, shall we? So the first skill is Smite here. So we take 3 points into Pillars of Light because we like that double cast chance. This helps our clear. Although this double cast does not proc a healing hand, sadly, but that's fine. It's just mainly for extra single target. It's just 36% more damage. Then 5 points into Sacrifice for that massive 250% more damage. This build wouldn't work otherwise. Now, currently, I am running 2 points into Atonement. This is to make it so that we only sacrifice like 8% of our HP every single time we cast a Smite. That makes it so that, we're not constantly killing ourselves, right? And that's mainly one of the reasons why we use an Aurelis, because it can give you a +2 to Smite, which allows you to grab a node like this much easier, right? Then 1 point travel into Blinding Flash, 2 points into Piety. Although, if you get more plus levels to Smite, putting points into the Electrify chance here. Sorry, the cat is up here. Hi, cat. The Electrify chance here is much higher here than it is here. It's like by like 5%. That's because of Order of Lagan. Makes us ignite into Electrify chance, of course, right? Then we have 5 points into Charged Hand because that Electrify duration and penetration is very strong. Then eventually we take Unbalanced Skill so that we hit multiple targets whenever we actually cast Smite. And all that combined leads to a Smite that does a lot of damage, at least for being a self-cast Electrify build, right? Then the next skill we were talking about is Healing Hands. So the first point we take is 4 points into Hands over LS. This makes it so that we cast Healing Hands around the target whenever we cast Smite, which is great. Then 1 point into Searing Light travel, 2 points into Cleric's Wrath. We have, I believe, 3 buff skills. We have Healing Hands, we have Javelin, and we have Sigils. This is about 64% more damage, which is great, of course, right? Then 4 points into Consecrated Storm, so that, we get a bunch of Electrify on hit. Then 4 points to Holy Winds. This is the node that the whole build is built around. It makes it so that, you can play Self-Cast Smite without too many problems, because the targets get spread over, right? So we have spread multiple enemies, multiple Electrify stacks. We just cast Smite a few times in a pack, and all of a sudden, guess what? All of them have Electrify on them. I'm sorry, the cat is here again. Now we also take this note down here, since we're not actually manually casting Healing Hands, we can deal 48% more damage with it and also get a bunch of area with it, making the Healing Hands much bigger, right? This is very good. Then we take 1 point travel into Purity of Thought, then 3 points into Blessed Parish for the area. We want as much area as possible because this is part of our clear, to be honest. Like clears our trash. The Healing Hands from it is doing okay damage, and it's enough to kill trash. And it also reduces the mana cost to 0, so we don't have to deal with mana costs. Then for the last point, we take Raya's Chariot. Oh boy, Raya's Chariot. This has been one of the most mobility focused Sentinels I've ever played, and that is only because of this. Oh my goodness, is this one of the best skills they've introduced ever in the video game? And of course, we have the javelin move, right? Well, and it's not bugged, but still. But yeah, very mobile sentinel build, which is great, right? That's pretty much for Healing Hands. Then for Javelin, stereotypical Javelin setup. We care about, of course, the dash. We care about the banner. We care about the healing. We care about the smite cast. This just gives us extra smite cast on single target, and it also counts as a buff skill for our more damage from Cleric's Wrath, meaning that, of course, we can apply more Electrify stacks per second. I think this gets to like 0.8 per second, so we could just get an extra cast per second, right? We aren't necessarily stacking attunement, so we don't get the percent damage from this much, but we're just utilizing it for utility, for extra movement and stuff like that. This is definitely one of those that you could definitely like swap out for something else if you feel like as though something is better. Then Sigils of Hope. This is very important, as not only does it give us a lot of extra endurance threshold, as you can tell here, a lot of extra endurance threshold. When you get up into these higher corruptions, every single bit of EHP counts, of course, right? And as well, it also gives us a massive amount of ignite chance, which is then converted into electrify thanks to Order of Lagan, which is great. Then we also get stuff like extra healing percent as well per active sigil, which then makes us heal faster, which is great. Then for a volatile reversal, it's your stereotypical volatile reversal setup. Nothing too crazy. We just care about grabbing time rifts and grabbing the cooldown nodes and the cast speed, so we can deal a very large portion of damage. And that's pretty much it for volatile reversal. Now, we can talk about passives that are important. Mainly, there's not that much on the tree that actually helps our damage, meaning that we all focus on, of course, HP stacking. So, like HP here, EHP here, EHP here, although this works on, of course, your Raya's Chariot. Getting the health and mana gained on Smite makes it so we can sustain mana. The dual wielding, of course. Then 5 points into Blade Master for the cast speed, right? 5 points into Abyssal Endurance so we can get extra access to Volatile Reversal. Then the rest of Paladin is just like, oh, let's get some penetration. Oh, let's get some attunement, right? HP, health, healing effectiveness, necrotic res, 2 points of attunement so that my Ustalini sphere is proccing properly, right? 1 point travel into Faith Armor, 12 points into Prayer Ages for that flight HP, 2 points in Divine Essence. We're constantly healing ourselves, and it gives us 30% increased armor and healing effectiveness, which is great. Then 12 points in Reverence of Duality for the HP, and then 12 points in Light of Rye for the movement speed, because I like going fast. How about you? That's pretty much it for the passives. Now for the gearing here, this helmet base, the Lean on Great Helm, makes it so that we don't need Crit Avoid. Eventually, you'd want a better rolled one than me. I'm technically actually taking 50% bonus damage from crits, but we'll definitely have to fix that later. Plus 4 to Healing Hands is nice because it lets you grab more points in the tree, and then eventually there you'd put Strength on that implicit or Vitality. Then Health and Endurance are great suffixes. For the amulet here, we have double damage over time. Eventually, you'd want HP on this. You can actually run double HP on amulets now, thanks to this hybrid stun avoidance affix. So you could actually have a bleeding heart eventually with 4 different stats: LE damage over time, HP, hybrid stun, and avoidance, which would be great. Our wand here, we have cast speed, LE dot, ignite, and shock on hit. This is the only place we can get shock on hit in a decent amount, and the ignite chance, of course, gets converted into electrify with smite. The cast speed is very important. One of the biggest things about this build is to get as much cast speed as possible because that makes your clear feel better, and it also just makes everything feel better. So you definitely want cast speed. So that's why I'm utilizing the Dragon Horn base. Then for the chest here, just as much armor and HP as you can possibly shove on it. And also as well, the armor mitigation is really strong as it also applies to damage over time. This means that we get about 30% of this is damage over time mitigation, which is like 20%, which fully makes up for the dual wielding, right? Which is great. Or else here, dot, you can eventually get lightning damage percentage, then ignite, and then eventually on the last suffix, you could get shock on hit. Technically, got a 4 LP Aurelis, but I don't really doubt you'd want that. Uh, then rings here, silver rings with like damage over time, LE dot, void res, HP. Same thing on the other. Eventually, you'd want LE dot, damage over time, HP, endurance. Capping your endurance is very important, right? And getting resistances. Then for the belt here, eventually this should be a Praetorian belt, which is the 250 base armor, but we don't have that and I haven't been able to make one. But we have increased life, a hybrid life, LE dot, and eventually you'd want cleanse. I've been playing this entire time without cleanse, although it sucks, man, without having cleanse. Then the gloves here, cast speed, HP, sealed frailty on the Eternal Gauntlet base so we can take less dot damage. The boots here, like I said, you could use any boots. I just chose to use Blood of the Exiles because not only does it gives me the intelligence to work with my Usulini Sphere, it also gives me some armor, as you can tell, and it also gives me some decent movement speed, which lets me zoom through monos. Then Usulini Sphere, cast speed is most important to have on this, then HP, and then like LE dot, and then like a resistance or something like that. Or you can put frailty here instead of the gloves. And then, of course, Usulini Sphere requires you to do attunement to intelligence so we can get the massive like 360% increased damage from the water orbs, right? Then for the idols here, damage with vengeance on the sides here. Then HP. I did HP res here to cap my res. Then res here, and then res and damage over time here. And that's pretty much it for the character. For blessings, let's talk over here. Ignite on hit, this gets turned into Electrify, very important. This note here, Lightning Shred, gives us more Lightning Pen. This could be like Lightning Res maybe to help you out with resistances. It could be a myriad of things. This here, All Res, since we're actually getting crit bonus from this, we don't actually need the extra crit avoid. Here, armor, of course, and then armor. And that's pretty much it for the skills, everything. That's pretty much it for the character. With all that being said, this has been Dread. I'll have to go do something else. Bye!